So we recently had, it's not necessarily a defined record break, as in like this is the most goals of all time, but it is the most goals of the salary cap era that was recently achieved by Austin Matthews. He scored his 66th, I believe, 2 days ago as a recording, so that would be what, Wednesday? Um, and it broke Ovechkin's 65 goal mark in the salary cap era. And the last time for someone to score as many goals as Matthews did was Mario Lemieux back in 1995 to 96, which is obviously some pretty exclusive company to be in.
Oh yeah.
It's an insane mark for him. There's lots to talk about here in terms of like what this means for his legacy, what this means for the rest of the season going forward. I know you brought up before the pod the possibility of him being in the conversation for the Hart Trophy amongst all this. What are your kind of general thoughts on this, just to get started?
Well, it's obviously a big deal. I think oddly, I felt like a lot of people have kind of just pushed it to the wayside because of what Kucherov and what McDavid are currently doing. But it is an insane accomplishment. The fact that he is pretty much on pace to hit 70. It feels like a foregone conclusion that he's going to do it with the amount of games that they
Yep.
have left. So it's pretty bonkers. He's having an I hate to give any love towards the Maple Leafs, but he is having an absolutely ridiculous season. And I mean, it's led to a lot of conversations that he is absolutely worthy of being in. I think that the fact that people aren't talking about him for Hart is pretty bonkers. I think that sure, his points are nowhere near like Kucherov and McDavid, but one argument for his case is just the simple conversation of what do you think's more impressive, 70 goals or 100 assists?
Yeah.
Which I'll toss over to you because I'm curious what your opinion on that is.
Well, I think it's the fact that it hasn't been done since Mario Lemieux in
Yeah.
1995. I think that tells you what's more impressive. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if I need to say anything more than that.
Well, it is certainly. I mean, not to discredit 100 assists because just because
No, no,
it's
no.
happened twice this year. It is that is as well an insane accomplishment. But you have to
Yeah,
consider the fact that that counts secondary assists. That counts all of that type of thing. Goals are
yeah.
goals. Austin Matthews by the end of this year, more than likely, maybe don't knock on wood. I actually don't know if I'd feel that bad for him if he didn't in 70. Screw the Maple Leafs. But like, if all things continue going the way they're going, Austin Matthews is going to hit 70 goals, and he will have
Yeah.
put all 70 of those goals in the net by himself. At least, like, I don't know how many primary assists Kucherov and McDavid have off the top of their head, but it's not 100, right? Like that's
Yeah.
the thing, and I would reckon that it's probably not 70 either. It's probably in the 60s if I were a betting man.
Yep.
So I mean, it really should show just how insane of an accomplishment he is. I mean, sure, he's got a talented roster pretty much surrounding him, but I don't know. I think, yeah, I don't know what else to even add to that other than moving on to the other parts of this conversation, just on more legacy and all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he absolutely should be in the Hart conversation if he's not already there. I think this is a
I
stupid
do
season
too.
for it. This Hart race has been absolutely insane. Because I mean, I didn't even mention McKinnon, but he's also up there. Like I
Yep.
think in points, I think that they pretty much have a three-way tie going, and that has pretty much distracted away from the fact that up north, Matthews is having one of the greatest scoring seasons we've seen in just about 40 years.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I if we want to move over, because I do think the honestly, with the Hart Trophy conversation, it is kind of a crapshoot, and it's not like you said with the 100 assist season. It's not like those guys won't deserve it. I like you said, I think he should absolutely be in the conversation, but it's not the thing where I'm gonna say like he got robbed necessarily if like McDavid, Kucherov, or McKinnon get it, because I think they all deserve it. Even if I do think that having a 70 goal season is a little bit more impressive, um, and should probably garner the award. It's such a close race and such impressive seasons from all four guys that I wouldn't be upset either way, depending on who it goes to. Um, in terms of the legacy stuff, so the last person to score more than 65 goals
On the
in
dot.
a season in the salary cap era was Ovechkin.
Yeah.
And this is what I think the really interesting part of the conversation is. We got into this a little bit before the pod,
Yeah.
where you posed a hypothetical situation.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to
Sure.
run through that.
So Ovechkin scored 65 goals back in 2007, 2008. So the hypothetical that I have seen be tossed around the internet is if you were to pretty much take a time machine, kidnap kidnap Alex Ovechkin in 2007 and bring him to the current times, would he be able to do what Austin Matthews is currently doing? And if so, how many goals do you think he'd be able to score? And the reason that this is so interesting to me is because you see pretty much two opposite sides of the spectrum, where you see people who are Toronto Maple Leafs fans saying, no, nothing would change. Austin, he'd score 65 goals. And you're seeing people who are legitimately in full belief that Alex Ovechkin would be able to not only break his mark of 65 goals, but would arguably be a threat to Wayne Gretzky's 92 goal record, which is a ridiculous thought to think about. I mean, even if you just look at the point totals for that season, I think that's more the biggest argument. I think I was looking at it before the podcast. I think only 2 players broke the 100-point mark, which we have seen that. It is, I don't have the number in front of me for how many players have done it this season, but I can tell you it's a lot more than 2. I think there's more than, I think 3 players have 120. So that margin has certainly raised. And I think, I don't know. We talked about it a bit beforehand, but I'll let you give your opinion on this whole thing.
So,
and then I'll give mine.
I think that's going way out of hand, and I do think that a lot of the times in discussions like this, there is like what I call like a nostalgia bias.
Yes.
Where it's not like Ovechkin wasn't great, but you kind of like put him on a higher pedestal because it's not like I don't know. I feel like you look more. It's rose-tinted glasses, right? You look back on the past more favorably. Not that Ovechkin wasn't fantastic. Not that I don't think he would score more than 66, but I do think that a lot of those comparisons to say like he's going to break the all-time goal record or he's going to score like 75. I think he'd probably end up around where Matthews is at around 70 would be my guess because of the slight inflation of goals per year. So I pulled up actually. I have all the
Did you actually pull it up?
What scoring? Yes, I did. So this year, average amount of goals in a game is 3.11. That is indeed up from because it was 07-08. It was 2.8 goals per year. So it's not that much of a difference.
So if you apply the math,
yeah. So like you could do.
Yeah, if you apply the math, how many does Ovi get?
It's a very imperfect science. I mean, it's probably like 65 to 70.
Yeah, it probably is.
Here's the reason if I want to keep making this point, because it is a combination of like rule changes and overall improvement of talent around people. Because the more people who enter the league as time gets on, the talent pool gets better.
Yes.
But the comparison I want to make is to when people were setting these goal records in the 80s and in the mid 80s and 90s. So remember, it's like a little bit over 3 goals per year this year. It's a little bit under. Yeah, no, we're at full 4 goals per game.
Oh yeah,
averaging 4 goals per game.
No, that is why we're having this conversation at all about the. I almost would refrain. I would change. I would change the term of like most goals in the salary cap, or just change the thing to most goals post Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, like I don't know, Teemu Selanne and Brett Hull. Like that's what it should really be, because there was, I think, once all of those guys screwed off and we entered the dead puck era, it was a completely different game, which is the reason we're having this conversation at all. It's the fact that Ovechkin, I think, won the scoring race with like 107 points, which is pretty low. I think I think there's obviously been players who have gotten lower, I think, in that time frame for the Art Ross, but I'm having a hard time thinking of any.
Yeah, it is a low number. So one other thing that I think you have to bring up in this conversation is supporting cast.
Yes, that's true.
Because are you bringing the entire 2007-2008 Capitals team?
That's a good point.
Or
What
are
did
you
they look
just
like?
bringing Ovechkin and putting him on the... They were third in the Eastern Conference. I don't think they were quite peak Capitals yet, but they
No.
were... like, Boudreaux was the coach. They had Nicholas Backstrom at that point. Like, they were still a good team. They're probably a lot better than this current Capitals team, is my point. If Ovechkin has to play with his current Capitals team, I just think because he can't play the game by himself, he'd still probably hit around 65. But I wonder if that deflates it a little bit and almost balances out the
Yeah.
stuff in terms of like,
That
rule
is an
changes
interesting
and
point.
improvements in pace of play. Yeah.
Looking at this team, I don't actually think they did have back. Oh no, they did. I was missing them. Never mind.
They did.
They did have Backstrom. Yep. It was a 20-year-old Backstrom who still had 55 assists, 14 goals that year. That's wild. That is a wild stat line. But yeah, no, I see your point because that is the interesting thing. I mean, looking across the board, they really didn't have that much talent on this team either. That is the funny thing. Like, if I'm just looking at point totals, like I don't remember this team at all for the most part. But like it goes Ovechkin with how many did he officially have? 112. Okay, I was off by a bit actually. That's actually a pretty good number for the Art Ross. But he had 112. Then it goes to Backstrom, and then it goes to 42 for Semin. I think his name was Semin. Alexander Semin. It's been a while since I've had to say that name.
Yeah.
Like he had 42, and then it falls off a cliff. And then it's just a bunch of people floating around the 30s. Which is, even considering the dead puck era, that is pretty sad. Like, past that
still,
top line.
As a team as a whole, they're still third in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they're still a good team, and I still think they're bet because like the Capitals are 9th currently.
Yeah.
The Capitals, it's versus they had 94 points to finish the season in 2007-2008. They're not going to get close to that here. Unless they win all their last 3 games. I don't know. I mean, obviously, it's all hypothetical.
Yeah.
I do think that. I think providing that context to it in terms of goals per year hasn't increased that much, and do you bring the entire team back with him? Also, like competition is probably harder too. That's another thing to factor in.
Yes.
Like the teams he's playing against are probably better. So I don't know. I think we should. I know it's tough because I think we get nostalgia bias, and I think we also want. It's also easy to discredit people for playing for the Leafs and not want to.
Yeah, I was gonna say
acknowledge them as much. But I do think it's really important to be like, yeah, this is like legitimately one of the more impressive things we've seen in the sport in the last few years.
I just think that the conversation of Ovi versus Matthews is such an interesting one because it's 2 goal scorers who are legitimately fairly different in how they scored their goals. Like there's other than the fact that both of them have the ability to shoot the puck like pretty much no one else we've ever seen. They had pretty much no crossover in their styles, especially like in the last little bit, which I think just has made it a lot more interesting. I think it almost becomes a thing of which style do you think would be more effective now, which I think you gotta give to Matthews. As much as I love me some Ovi. I love me Ovi.
Yeah.
Ovi is one of my favorite players. But like I mean there's a reason it's working for I still think that Ovechkin's style is pretty much timeless. Like I think that the ability to pretty much pick a spot on the ice and just sit there. He didn't do that as much back then, but still. Like that being if as long as people still know how to pass, at which people do in every single era, you'll be able to score by doing that for until the death of the sun.
True.
Like
That's true.
I think that his style would still translate well, like prime Ovi. But I don't know. I definitely think before this, I went into it thinking that my estimate for what I think Ovi would get in this 2024 era would be probably 75. I don't think he beats Matthews by much. I don't think he gets close to that Gretzky number. But I think that he probably just adds... I mean, he adds 10 is what I was pretty much guessing. I think you would probably end up adding 10 to that total. Which the more we've talked about it, I've kind of hated that opinion a bit more because I definitely see your side of things. But at the same time, screw the Leafs. So I'm gonna die on that hill. I'm gonna die on that hill.
The more we've talked about it, the more I think it may not even change. Like that may be my final opinion that I come to. I've kind of swayed between 70 and 65. It probably doesn't change by all that much.
I think 70.
I don't think it's been...
I actually think it would go 70 just based on the numbers that you kind of brought up.
Yeah.
Realistically,
I think that's
without
fair.
bias, I think 70 is a good number. I think both players
Okay.
probably end up sitting around 70. But because Matthews plays for the Leafs, Ovi gets 75.
There you go.
And because Ovi is a hilarious Russian man, and I love him. So he can have 75.
Okay. So one last thing before we wrap up, I think. Whether you want to put bias aside or not, Ovi is obviously chasing the all-time goals record right now.
Yeah.
What do you think the chances are that at the end of his career, Matthews beats Ovi to that record?
Ooh. You see, that's so hard. Not because I don't think
it's impossible to tell because there's like
I was gonna say
years left
that's not a
we have
testament
that
of skill. That's a testament of longevity.
longevity.
Which I mean, Ovechkin. Actually, you know what? I can give an answer on this. No, I don't think so. For the exact reason that I gave for why I think Ovechkin's style back then translates so well to the game now, and still does translate. I mean, that dude can't even skate anymore, and he's still scoring 30 goals. Like, I mean, just look at it like that, right? I think that the reason that Ovechkin has been so successful for so long is because he has been able to plant his ass inside of that circle, like on the power play, and just sit there and just wait for somebody to pass him the puck, top corner, game over. And it's just that every single time. And it works. It works for him. Nobody knows how to stop it because there's not really a way to stop it. It is just fundamentally a very easy way to score, and no one else is better at it. And Austin Matthews, I think, I don't know. He doesn't really have that signature move yet, I'd argue, which is a good thing. It shows that he's versatile. But does that versatility last until he's 35 or and higher? Maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe he falls off a bit quicker than Ovechkin does. And I think so that would probably be my prediction. Is that discounting Matthews? Maybe. But I think that the whole I don't know. I also just love the fact that Ovechkin has literally just made a career off of standing still. He's basically just Shaq in the paint. It's hilarious.
I mean, that's kind of the thing where it's like, you're right in terms of it is more of a longevity thing than a talent thing at that point. Because I don't even have this off the top of my head, but I'm like 99% sure that Ovi has played way more than Gretzky at this point. It's because, I'd be pretty certain. Okay, maybe I don't. Maybe I'm not as certain.
I don't think so.
But we can maybe try to pull that up. But I do think it is.
No, definitely he has. Never mind. I'm talking on my
There we
ass.
go.
Okay.
That's what I thought.
I didn't know. I didn't pull up the number. I just actually thought about it for a second. I'll get you the actual number. But
I do think that is like the era conversation we're talking about too, in terms of the era Gretzky played in. Anyways, putting all of that aside,
Gretzky played literally from the start of the high point era to the end of it. He played the perfect amount of time in that. Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wait. Oh wow! Actually, Gretzky played more by around only 60 games.
Oh wow!
It's
okay.
very close.
Gretzky played technically.
Gretzky played from 81 to 1999. Ovi's played from 2003
to now.
Is it 6? Is that right?
Yeah, 2005, 2006.
Oh. Why did I have that number?
Yeah, it's not, I think because he was drafted in 2003, lockout year 2005.
Oh, that's why. Yeah. Okay, never mind.
So think about that too. If Ovi had a season like H19.
Well, you also got to think about what was it, 2013, where he only got half a year, then COVID. Like, there's a lot of what ifs.
Honestly,
He could have had it. There's a world out there where he probably already has it.
That is another reason why this conversation is kind of silly, because we don't know what's going to happen in the next 15 years. Like, when COVID 2 comes up.
Oh shit! COVID
exactly.
2 electric boogaloo. It's coming for us all.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
One more thing I'll throw over to you. I like to think, at least, and this is because I'm an optimist when it comes to Ovi breaking the goal record, is the fact that I am too. I have a very firm opinion on this as well, because I've seen this tossed around. Do you think that there is a world out there where Ovechkin goes, and this is assuming Ovechkin still has a love for the game, and maybe the Capitals end up getting a little bit better and they're contending, and he has a reason to stick around. Do you think there's a world where Ovechkin can hit 1,000 goals?
Is what the goal record? Is it 8?
He's at
892.
It's 892. He has 852.
Yeah, he's not gonna get 1,000.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
No, I think he is just like, you know what's the funny thing? I think it would be the most Ovechkin thing ever for him to like legitimately just quit the second he gets 853 or 893. I think he's jumping on a plane back to Russia the day that happens.
Probably, yeah.
Maybe. Well, shocked, yeah, like I think he's done the second. I think that's the only reason he's still playing. I think if he had the record or it was just way out there, it wasn't even a question, I think he wouldn't be playing anymore. I think he would have retired. Like, because if you think that, I think Ovechkin's past his prime, and he's past his prime by quite a bit. I'd actually argue that he's kind of overrated at this point. And I know that's a crazy statement, considering he has 64 points, still had 30 goals. But, like, the only reason he's still scoring 30 goals is because that shot ain't going anywhere. He still absolutely has that. But, I mean, watching that dude skate, he doesn't have it anymore. Like, you can tell.
He's 38.
Exactly. Right? And there's no shame in that. There's no shame in that. But do I think he'll hit 1,000? Hell no. Oh, yes. Get Ovi the goal record. Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. So the one thing I would say in terms of just to finish up the conversation with what we were talking about before, I did want to bring up the fact that through 8 seasons in both of their respective careers, Matthews is currently outpacing Ovechkin.
By how
much?
Not by much. By how much?
Not by much. 6.
I was going to say, that's not going to save him. I still think that the one, and I will say this, it's not a skill thing. You can say whatever you want. That's why I had first brought up the argument of primes, of whether you think it's a longevity thing, and it's going to stay that way. I don't give a shit if Austin Matthews has 2 or 3 70-goal seasons in his career in the next little bit. That doesn't matter. He still needs to put up the amount of 50-goal and 40-goal seasons that Ovechkin has been able to put up, which I honestly don't think anyone will be able to do again for a very long time. Just because it's the type of thing where it's the sky hook, it's the fadeaway, it's the step back 3. Austin Matthews don't got that. He doesn't have his signature thing that he can go to get a goal. Like, what he has is pure unbridled goal scoring ability. That is the one thing that he has. So if you really want to look at it just like that, he is probably the most well-rounded scorer that we have seen.
Oh yeah, that's a good
ever, point. If not. I mean, I'd put Mario Lemieux in that conversation with him.
I would probably put Mario over.
I think I would too. I would too. I'm just putting this argument out there. Like, it's It's just the fact that, and it should just show you how there's no reason to really like. We're not trying to take away from what Austin Matthews is doing. He still is a ridiculously skilled player. And the fact that he's even in this conversation should say wonders. But to be able to reach the point that Ovechkin has had, you have to really have that one thing. Right? It's the same thing for, like... It's the same thing with, like... I know this one actually was broken, but it's the same thing as the Kareem NBA scoring record, where he got that because he just basically nobody could stop him in the paint. He had a skyhook. He pretty much was unstoppable from inside like 5 feet in the paint. Nobody could stop him. And it wasn't until we saw LeBron come in, and LeBron could just score at will. Which, if you want to make the argument that Austin Matthews is your LeBron in this scenario, Leafs fans, go right ahead. I will listen to you, but you can go right ahead. It's just, I mean, it's going to be a tough road ahead for him. I think that he's, especially when he gets up there and the speed starts to leave him, and all he's left with is his shot. Is he still going to be able to do it? We'll see. It'll be interesting. Yeah. I mean, we've got the next 15 years to see what ends up happening, so